All right, I think we can just go ahead and get started and let people join as we start. All right, hi everyone, welcome. My name's Claire. I'm the events coordinator here at Alertus. I'll be your moderator today. In this webinar, Tim Ditto, Senior Regional Account Manager at Alertus, will discuss how the Alertus system leverages your existing fire access control panel, one of the most reliable technologies on campus, to deliver cost-effective wall-to-wall alert saturation. Our session today will be from 1 to 2, and we'll begin with an in-depth presentation from Tim, and then have the opportunity to engage with Tim to go over any questions you guys may have. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared with you today after the session. All right, Tim, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Claire, and thanks everybody for carving out some time to meet with us today. I look forward to discussing how the Alertus FACP integration, specifically with voice-capable systems, can be a tremendous asset to you and your organization. Now, before we jump in, I do want to go over the agenda for today. So, just a quick introduction about who I am, my experience here at Alertus. I'm also going to talk about, who we are, how Alertus was founded, all of that good stuff, the customers that we serve. We'll do a brief Alertus overview, give you the 30,000-foot view, if you will, of our threefold approach to unified mass notification, and also introduce how that folds into NFPA 72 guidelines. Um, We'll talk about some of the challenges that we commonly see when discussing the fire alarm control panel integration. We'll talk about NFPA 72 and standardization, specifically around intelligibility for alerts, and discuss why that really matters and why that's such an important system to integrate and include into your overall mass notification strategy. We'll also talk about some of the underneath the hood, how actually the system is connected into existing fire alarm panels, and also touch on some other FACP integrations before opening it up to Q&A at the end. So before we talk about Alertus, just some background on myself. I've been with Alertus now since 2019. Really been focused with schools in Canada, in the UK, throughout New England, and now in the Midwest. So really have seen a plethora of different organizations, different needs, um, and really just also interesting to see how the solution is applied not only across verticals, but also across different cultures. So, again, it might not always be the typical alert that perhaps we think of the States, but, again, a solution that could be available to anyone worldwide. Now, for Alertus, we're another company actually founded out of a dorm room. So, again, just collaboration between our founder and CEO, Jason Volk, and amongst others who actually are still with the company. But unfortunately, the company idea was actually born out of a tragedy. Back in 2001, a tornado ripped through University of Maryland's College Park campus, unfortunately killing two students, both of whom happened to be sisters. So at the time that it happened, there was no warning. Systems like ours weren't really readily available. And Jason thought to himself, why is that the case? And how could we develop these kinds of systems? So Jason developed the integration into NOAA, our alert beacon, entered that into a business competition at the University of Maryland, and we won a $10,000 grant. Now, fast forward 24 years later, we're still proudly headquartered in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area, but we're now serving a customer base worldwide of over 2,500 organizations. So we're extremely proud of not only the growth that we've seen, but some of the different clients that we serve from the federal space, obviously education, commercial, you name it, we're in it. So this is a great visual right here to introduce our threefold approach to unified mass notification, right? So what we first want to do is we want to take your existing emergency response plan and we want to simplify that plan into a single press of a button. And that button can exist in multiple user-friendly locations, like an app on a mobile phone, a hardwired panic button in the main office. But again, we want to provide those intuitive solutions so that individuals are able to activate alerts under the most strenuous of circumstances. Next, we look to integrate with existing technologies already deployed throughout your environment. So here, obviously, the fire alarm control panel is going to be a huge one, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg for us. Really common integrations for us, we see desktop, laptop override, digital signage override. Even if it's just a traditional PA system, we can integrate with those very similar to the way that we integrate with the voice-capable fire alarm control panel. Outdoor notification systems we can integrate with. VoIP systems we can integrate with. So again, we're not really trying to rip and replace solutions that we can use to deploy notifications. We want to ensure that those technologies that are always in the environment that people are already used to seeing can then be used to deploy emergency notifications in true emergency scenarios. And third and finally is where we introduce our proprietary hardware solutions like the alert beacons, like our IP speakers and other notification appliances to fill in any potential gaps in notification coverage. So, here thinking about main points of egress, perhaps athletic areas like gymnasiums, cafeterias, really anywhere where we're going to be dealing with a lot of ambient noise and perhaps can't always count on somebody to have their cell phone on them or right in front of a workstation. Our audiovisual tools are going to be able to do a great job of cutting through the noise, grabbing attention, and giving direction in those true emergency scenarios. And just a great slide to piggyback off of our threefold approach to unified mass notification. And actually, NFPA 72 points towards the most effective mass notification systems using as many of these communication channels as we effectively can to achieve redundant communication. So, like for instance, in my vertical education, we often see schools have thought about the mobile solution, um, but they don't really take into consideration how much that actually leaves, you know, up to interpretation for folks that aren't in your text and email database, that might not have their cell phone on them in that moment, who perhaps might have just simply blocked that number because they've just become overwhelmed with the amount of alerts that they do get to their phone. Again, in this world that we're finding ourselves in, we see situations where folks are really dependent on one system. Typically, those don't go great. In situations where they have outdoor notification to blanket areas, indoor alerting, saturating space with the same notifications to mobile devices, sending the alerts to mobile devices as well as enterprise and network-based solutions like your desktop and laptop computers or VoIP phones. That multi-layered approach is what we've seen lead to the most successful outcomes in true emergency scenarios. Because again, we're sending that same exact information through as many of these channels. So if it's your first time stepping foot on campus, or if you're someone that's in these buildings every single day, we're going to provide a very digestible message to everyone everywhere. So let's start talking about common challenges that we see that drive folks towards the FACP integration. Uh, Typically, loud environments, lack of visual and audible notification ADA compliance, which folds also into our proprietary hardware solutions. Difficulty reaching visitors and contractors. And I think this is a really massive one for us because, again, the FACP integration for us, it doesn't care if you're a part of your text and email system or not. It's just going to blanket that area with the alert. And if you're in the area, the FACP system has been designed so that every single one of those occupiable zones have its own very distinct way of getting an intelligible message. So, again, that is an absolutely huge key here for the FACP integration specifically. Cell phones with no service and access and updated contact lists. So that, touches on a bit on the visitors, but again, especially with schools and perhaps with historic buildings and whatnot, sometimes areas of those buildings aren't getting any Wi-Fi coverage. So again, going with a really reliable system like the FACP, great way to combat that. Multiple systems to activate, and this is one that I've actually seen in the field where uh, one of my customers now, they before they became a customer of ours, they had a situation where they needed to send out a text and email. Well, their text and email system was down for 10 minutes, right? So at that point, they had to go to each building, message off a general evac message, which in a bomb threat scenario, which they were in, is a big no-no. So again, it took them way too long to get the message across all those buildings, and also had to activate each building individually. If they had a solution like ours where they could just, again, press that single button and have that activation go across all endpoints that is needed, it's going to be really tough to say that that's not going to be able to help you out in an emergency scenario. Large facility and large employee headcount, again, saturating areas with notification is just a great way to, in a no-nonsense way, to combat that. And then time to activate alerts, right? Like again, if we have to always go to the same dedicated location to activate that notification, we're not putting ourselves in the best position possible to potentially save lives. So let's talk about fire evacuation standards. Not sure if anybody here is hates themselves enough to read the entire NFPA 72 guidebook, but section 18 really touches on, and 24 too, but section 18 really touches on the intelligibility in all required areas, which makes this just such a viable integration for us. One question that I always like to ask prospects is, what do people do in your surrounding area for mass notification? When I ask that question, I rarely even get a response simply because there are so many different strategies, vendors, schools of thought for how to best combat situations like active shooter, like evacuation, like shelter in place. Now, when you ask those same organizations, though, what you're doing for fire evacuation, you're getting two very distinct answers, right? You're either doing one of the more modern FACP solutions through strobes as well as speakers, or you have an older solution where you're talking about, or a solution that just works better for certain environments, where we're talking about tones as well as strobes, right? But those systems, and ties into section 18, those systems are all designed so that, again, every single area within your building is going to be able to have an intelligible alert, right? So this last line here, all occupiable areas must be separated into acoustically distinguishable areas or spaces. Geez, almost too much coffee today. For clear alerts throughout the building. This integration is crucial for your mass notification strategy. So again, with that standard there, they have already stated that every FACP system that is installed into your building, we've already done the work to make sure that we have appropriate notification devices to combat any kind of levels, ambient noise levels, to make sure that we have enough speakers so that we're not having any kind of echo effect within the buildings. This section right here really makes it so that, whether it's a dining area, an educational environment, areas where folks are walking around in, restrooms, meeting or conference rooms, or even restricted areas, we're going to be getting alerts to everyone, everywhere, again, through one of the most reliable systems that we've already invested in. It also doesn't hurt that the voice-capable fire alarm control panels are extremely expensive. So being able to do more than just fire evacuation with those, it really just gets you a little bit more ROI off of that already large investment. Now, let's talk about how we're able to actually integrate into voice-capable fire alarm control panels specifically. And the device that we're using to leverage all of the speakers on those panels is what's called our text-to-speech interface. Now, this is a PoE device, right? So that's how it's able to connect onto your network and also reach the Alertus server. The device itself is looking to connect into the fire alarm control panel using an audio line input and contact closure. So as you can see here, we have a diagram of how that wiring would work out. So we have the audio being fed into that PA system. And with the FACP integration here, we also have the two sets of contact closures. And we do this so that, in case, um, certain fire municipalities need us to do a certain kind of sequencing, right? So if this is happening, what happens with Alertus? And if Alertus is activating, what happens with the FACP? Again, these contact closures are going to be able to address that in whatever way is going to be appropriate um, for your fire municipality. So obviously the focus for today was to touch on the voice capable fire alarm control panels, but I also want to make it very clear that that's just one of the ways that we can integrate with FACPs. Very simply, and having schools do this already, um, we can take in a contact closure, right? So if you have an older system that doesn't have any or any speakers, I should say, and you wanted to just be able to know when those buildings go off, or perhaps you wanted to, send in a message to other buildings that, hey, this building's evacuating. We could actually use contact closures on the FACPs and connect those to our alert beacons so that when that FACP is activated, the alert beacon is able to essentially use that like a hardwired panic button press and kick off a already existing preset notification to whatever the determined endpoints would be. Now, we also have the ability to integrate with a fire alarm interface using an RS-232 connection. The RS-232 connection, that really allows folks to send out not only what building, but like areas of buildings. So it allows you to do intelligible alerts. It's actually ingesting the alarm codes that are being sent through the FACP and then pushing out that information. So for instance, if you wanted to know exactly, if you wanted to get a message to your cell phone telling you exactly where in the building that fire evacuation message was originated from, well, then we could absolutely do that with that RS-232 integration there. So, again, want to make it very clear that while the most common and most popular integration right now with the FACP is that text-to-speech interface using audio line input, we do have multitudes of ways of integrating with these systems. So I know we had a whole hour booked. I hope you don't hate me too much for giving back 40 minutes of the day and hope everybody's able to maybe sneak into lunch today. But really appreciate everybody's time. Hope that you're all able to take something away from the conversation or what we went over and apply it in your environments to hopefully make it a little bit of a safer place. So, um, with that said, Claire, I'll go ahead and pass the reins over to you.
Thanks, Tim. We can get into the Q&A portion now. If you guys have any questions, please submit them in the chat or the question box. We have received a few questions. The first question we have is, what fire panels are you guys able to integrate with?
So, really for us, and this goes back to, not only fire panel integrations, but integrations to other third-party systems. It's not so much about the vendor, it's about the connections available. So like I said, we just need the contact closure as well as the audio line level input to be able to plug into that system. Common vendors that we've seen, Honeywell Notifier, Honeywell Silent Night, Edwards EST panels, I have seen quite a bit. We're doing a lot of work with simplex panels. and Siemens would be the other one that I've seen.
All right, the next question we have is the text-to-speech module UL listed to work with fire alarm panels or even mass notification systems?
So the I'd have to double check on that actually. So I'll send a follow-up email. I do not believe the text-to-speech interface itself is a UL listed solution.
All right, the next question we have is how would you do voice notifications if you have buildings that do not have voice-capable FACPs?
So this is actually pretty common that we run into. So for instance, I have a school that was founded in the 1700s, and some of their newer buildings, they have, the more modern FACPs with speakers throughout. Some of their buildings don't have any speakers through the FACP. So in those situations, we've just gone ahead and installed our own, excuse me, IP speakers so that we can use those to saturate areas with notifications. Going back to what I was talking about with the other ways of integrating with FACPs, if you can do the contact closure integration with that fire alarm control panel, if you have a building that have speakers through it, you can use that contact closure to activate the speakers within your building. So obviously it's not going to fit exactly within the classification of a voice capable FACP, but you would be able to activate speakers at the same time with a fire evacuation message when that is going off.
I have a follow-up from the module UL question. If there isn't any UL listings currently, have any of your customers gotten a field listing independent of Alertus?
Ooh, another great question. Not positive on that. I'll touch base with my engineering team to see if that's something that they've come up against. I know for me, usually once we submit the tier one designs, that puts any and all questions to bed. Also oftentimes in areas of the country I'm working in, it's just as like, here's the idea that we're doing, here's the wiring diagram, you get a thumbs up and, we're good to install. Especially with the text-to-speech interface, like it is not a very invasive integration like the RS-232 one is. So, important to keep in mind.
Right. The last question we have is the fire panel able to override the Alertus integration in the event that a fire evacuation is pulled while a mass notification is active?
Yes. So, and that goes back to having the multiple contact closures on the text-to-speech interface itself. So, those allow us to do whatever sequencing is going to be desirable for the organization.
All right, well, that concludes the Q&A section of the webinar. Thanks again, Tim, and thanks to everyone joining today. If you have any questions or need additional information, please feel free to email us at events@alertus.com and we'll be happy to assist you. Thanks, everyone.